welcome to this video for round 13 of the candidates, which means the penultimate round. Is this the right word? So only 2 rounds to go in my coverage, and it's a bit of a late video. I didn't manage to do it right after the round. It was simply too late. They played until, I don't know, after 10 o'clock in the evening, and with analysis and everything it's not possible to do. So I did do this now on the day after that, in the morning. So let's get ahead. Before the round we had Kramnik leading by half a point ahead of Carlsen, and it's a 2-person race now. Aronian is out of it after the loss in the round before. So Kramnik leading by half a point, and this is why I will focus on the games of Kramnik and Carlsen, and do the 2 other games rather briefly. And otherwise the video would simply be too long. I mean, the games were also really long and complicated, so let me focus on 2 games. I do Giri Aronian briefly. It wasn't happening much, and basically this is a game which is not so relevant anymore for the standings. It's very unlikely that this Sonnenborn-Berger tiebreak will be needed, which would be calculated from the results of all players. It's rather difficult to explain. In case of Kramnik and Carlsen tying, there would be various tiebreaks to look at, and if everything else is equal, then this Sonnenborn-Berger system would be in effect, where they calculate the results of all the opposing players, and basically the player gets rewarded who won the games against the guys with more points. So a win against Aronian or Swidler would count more than a win against Radjabov, for example. So this means that all those games would have some relevance, but it's rather unlikely now that this system would be needed. Okay, Giri Aronian. So basically this is not meaning much, this game, in terms of the overall standing. G3 is a bit uncommon here against the Slav. Aronian takes it, but now returns the pawn. It seems that Black has no good way to keep it. Let's go to this. Yeah, this is of course a fairly standard structure in the Slav Grunfeld complex, which this structure, which is somewhat between a very slight advantage for white and equality. It's very difficult to make a big progress here as white, but you're somewhat better simply because you've got 2 central pawns. But it's not much, yeah. It's really not much. In the game, a couple of normal moves were played, and this is the idea. Black wants to get rid of the queens, which would help to ease some pressure. Yeah, and here Black is even threatening to take on b3 and play bishop c2. So let's say white would play a move like this here. Then there's this idea. It's not fatal. This pawn is also hanging, but this is one idea. And white plays knight e3 to control the square. And now d5. Yeah, so we open up the position, and this knight on d5 is a bit of an annoying piece. It attacks e7 and threatens knight to c7. Yeah, here's also weakness. Basically this game there wasn't happening much. Black is covering the weaknesses here, c5, and white has those pawns to worry about. This probably cancels on each other out. There's simply not much going on. Yeah, here's a funny move, bishop c1. The idea being, if white captures, there's knight b3 with a really big fork. and it will end in a draw. Okay, played bishop f6, knight b3, rook b5. Yeah, in this position you could argue that white is probably somewhat better. He's got this annoying bishop on f6 and he's got the bishop pair, but it's probably not enough to get any meaningful advantage. A couple of moves later, the pawn here was returned, and here we got a repetition of moves. Yeah, certainly there was a bit more to this game than I showed now, but there's simply more interesting things to cover, and it really doesn't mean much in the overall standings. Yeah, next game is Swidler Giri, which actually was interesting, at least a bit more than the game before, but also due to time constraints I'm not doing it in so much detail. Swidler playing e4, I guess against Ivanchuk he returns to his old favorite. He's playing also d4 now and other moves, but Ivanchuk can play anything, so he probably felt that e4 is better suited. Okay, the French. Ivanchuk plays any opening, and Swidler going for the advance. He has played various lines against the French in the past, but the advance I think is a result of preparation together with Giri. They're good friends, and Giri is an expert on the advance, and they probably have analyzed it in some detail together. So Ivanchuk plays the nowadays most common line with bishop d7. There's also queen b6, but bishop d7 is maybe even somewhat more popular. Bishop e2 is the normal move. Some old school players still go bishop d3, but this is simply good for black. You can analyze this with various pawn sacrifices, but it's probably not enough, or maybe at best a fishy compensation. In this position also a3 is not considered to be so critical because of, yeah, basically both f6 is good, it's the sharp move, and also c4 gains in strength compared to the similar position with the queen, as now the queen is not needed on b6, and black now has this idea. One knight to a5, one knight to b6, and bishop a4, and this is also the reason why this is better here than with the queen on b6, as the queen on b6 blocks this important square for the knight. So this is why a3 is not played so much, and bishop e2 is the main move. Yeah, knight e7, castles, and knight g6. Black has got various ways to play this. He can also put the knight on f5. Knight g6, however, is an interesting concept. It is only a bit uncommon how Ivanchuk now continued. White here has got various moves. Mostly he plays bishop e3, but there are more than one. There's more than one possibility. g3, as played by Swidler, is also interesting. The idea is to, let's say here, is to play h4. The normal move here would be actually, we can exchange. The normal move here would be actually bishop e7, and then there's h4, trying to harass the knight. In fact, this is a rather common way to play this. It looks a bit strange, even this here. Look at this funny knight, but black plays f6 and knight f7, and on f7 the knight is actually superbly placed, looking at the pawn on h6, looking at all the important squares. So this is a funny idea connected with with knight to g6, but it didn't materialize in the game, as Ivanchuk played the much sharper move f6. It's interesting. White now took, there's too much pressure on e5, and recaptured with the queen. Bishop g5, queen f7, Yeah, there was knight g5. This is a somewhat annoying threat, so he covered this. So, yeah, let's have a look at this position. It's a bit similar to lines in the Tarrasch with knight d2, knight d2, knight f6, this line. It's the same pawn structure. The queen is on f7 though. This is a bit uncommon. But this of course can be a good post if you look at castles and the queen and the rook have some pressure here. The knight is on g6 instead of f6, which has got pros and cons. The knight nicely controls important squares, but it's less aggressive in a way as it looks at lots of squares that are covered by white pawns. It's an interesting position, and black shouldn't be in big danger unless it happens what Swidler played. He played the most critical line now. Knight b5, bishop returns, where else it needed to cover c7, and now knight e5. This is by far the critical way to play it, and they were also on their own now. Look at the times. It's not like this was any preparation. However, if you look at Ivanchuk, 1 hour, he already spent 1 hour and 4 behind on the clock. This is of course tricky in this position. It's really complicated. Yeah, well, what is this? Is this a pawn blunder? No, it isn't. There is an idea. Black took it. Bishop c5. Bishop e5 is actually similar. Bishop c5. This is the idea. Before black gets to castle, white manages to put a bishop here, and it's very difficult now for black to get the king into safety. The basic idea also is at one point to play knight to d6 and get this great bishop on d6. If black, for example, let's say a very simple way to play, if you played something like this, somewhat passively, this is simply awful for black to play. It's just normal moves here are good enough. The king never will get any kind of safety. The rook is well placed on the c-file, so if black would remove the knight, there's always this kind of stuff. And you also cannot castle long in this position. This is simply not on. Look at this. For example, this is why the rook is on c1. So this is the general idea. Ivanchuk played knight c4. He actually played this part of the game really well. He only stumbled later. Yeah, knight c4. This attacks this b5 knight. And what is white supposed to do? In fact, when I watched the game, I thought that simply bishop takes c4 should be good. But it's not clear at all. This looks really dangerous. Queen here, and now b6. Yeah, the question is how do you continue now? If you put the bishop somewhere here, I mean let's say here, then black has got a queen move, maybe here, and you manage to unravel, or queen e7, it's also probably okay. So it stays on this diagonal, and here black actually can play long castles. It looks a bit shaky, but it seems to be possible. There's not much threatened. I mean, something like this, let's say. You can even play this move. It's not losing, and black has got ways to maybe at some point even get on the diagonal. It's probably even better for black. This wasn't helping. Swidler played much better. He played b3. And yeah, now what is black supposed to do? He must play this move now, b6. He cannot play bishop takes b5. After this capture, it's too shaky for black. You simply get your position now opened up, and you will not be able to hold this. Let's for example, bishop c6, bishop h5, very important move. After which black must play g6, otherwise the queen is gone, of course. And something like this is impossible for black to play. Just look at this crossfire of bishops. Black has simply no way to defend against queen takes d5. Something like this. yeah, there's a multitude of moves. This is winning, or this even attacking the rook. Yeah, it's not possible. Ivanchuk played the only move, b6, and the only thing is, look at the clock times. He's getting dangerously low. Now a5. These are all only moves. It's not much else that black can play. And now he took it. This is a slightly different position than before. If white now, instead of this, takes on c4, this is playable, it seems. For example, bishop h5, g6, bishop takes h8, and bishop takes f1. While being a very murky position, this did I confuse something here? Let's look. I have my notes here, my analysis. B takes c4. Oh, I simply looked at the wrong line here. Yeah, black can take here. Bishop h5, g6, and this is not completely clear. After taking on h8, black of course takes here, and it's not so easy to assess this. Black's got 2 pawns for the exchange, and a very strong bishop on c4, and this somehow ties the position together in a way. Rook e1 and bishop d6. Yeah. This is maybe okay. I mean, black probably even can play king d7 at some point, and b5. It's not clear. It's similar to the game, actually. Yeah, this is somewhat similar. So, if white would take on c4, for example, we would get exactly the same position. This is why Swidler played the move rook e1, and this really sets difficult problems. The threat is queen takes d5, of course, and here in this position, Ivanchuk made this, with not much time on the clock, played the wrong move. It's simply very, very difficult, of course. Here the computer actually gives a really amazing line, starting with knight d6. The idea is queen d5, and now the cool move, king d7. I'm not sure how a human is supposed to find such stuff, but it's very interesting. Now, queen takes, and bishop c6. This is the big idea. You want the queen f3 counterplay. Queen b8 and queen f3. And in fact, this position is a draw. Really amazing. This, of course, is a big threat. If you go here, there's
check.
This happening, and we just have a repetition. And what can white do? He can give a check, but then you have got this neat move, knight b7. And, well, we can give another check, and I'll go here. And at the end of all this, white has no way to prevent the mate. He needs to, well, he needs to go here to set up this repetition of moves. But he has no way to win the game, actually. The queen is offside, and this is strong. Yeah, this probably would have been the fair result of the game. Ivanchuk, they both played really well, I think. If you look at it with the computer, it doesn't find much improvements. But he didn't see this move, or did some miscalculation. What he played is queen to f5, which isn't so terrible, probably. I mean, it's leading to an advantage for white, but the main thing also was that he was down to 8 minutes now. Look at this. White is somewhat better because of his safer king position. Black never will get a really good king position, and this bishop is returning to e5 here. Here bishop a7 would have been an improvement with the idea b5 to get some play against f2, and this actually isn't so clear. It's still playable for black. White is better, but it's something to play here. This is the relatively best continuation, something like this. And the game continues. It is much better for white, but you can continue to fight. After this, it's too much because you also have big problems with the king, and yeah, well, you're down to 4 minutes. So around here, it was very obvious that Ivanchuk will have problems again to make the time control, and now he was down to 40 seconds. Yeah, this is another exchange lost, but it didn't really matter.
Check.
And here Ivanchuk overstepped the time limit. Yeah, a good game by Swidler. I think he really is playing a good tournament. I mean, everybody is focusing mostly with good cause on the first place race, which is very, very exciting. But everybody is... there are other players playing in the tournament, and Swidler is doing a good job. I mean, he's Magnus' last round opponent, and it's not like Swidler is in bad shape. I mean, he lost against Kramnik and against Carlsen, but he won 3 games, and in quite convincing fashion even. So he's in good form. I'd also like to address briefly a subject that sometimes comes up in some chats or in forums or whatever, that people blame Ivanchuk for somehow I don't know, distorting the standings because he's well, playing like a genius against Carlsen and playing like a moron against the others. This is simply not true. I mean, this is people who actually write this only prove that they have no idea about this game. The thing is, Ivanchuk is an erratic player, has been an erratic player all his life. Even if 20 years ago, he's doing it all the time. He's playing like great the one day and like really very strangely on the day after that. It's nothing special that is happening in this tournament. It's simply his normal way of proceeding. And the thing is, people sometimes they claim, hey, he played great against Magnus. Well, I don't think so. I mean, what he did is he just mopped up this position where Carlsen basically self-destructed. It didn't take a 2007-50 player like Ivanchuk to win this game, really. I don't think so. The way Magnus played this game, he could have lost against any 2500 player. He simply lost the game. Ivanchuk didn't so much win it, and this was also what Ivanchuk said in the press conference. The only thing that he didn't do is overstep the time. But the thing is, Ivanchuk lost on time this game as well, but he was also totally busted on the board, and he was set really difficult problems, which didn't happen in the Carlsen game. Carlsen didn't set him any big problems. He just needed to make the normal moves, and that's it. So I really don't understand some of those discussions. All right, so this was the Swidler-Ivanchuk game, and now let's go to the main course, so to say. By the way, Ivanchuk is playing in the last round against Kramnik, so it's very interesting to see how we will play. But I think Ivanchuk is not the kind of player you want to have in the last round, where you probably need to win the game. You never know what happens. He might help you, but he might also play the game of his life. It can happen all the time. Okay, so now Kramnik against Gelfand, and well, it's clear that Kramnik wanted to press in this game, trying to win, but obviously not losing. This is the difficult thing. You know, you're in a tight race and you want to keep your winning options open, but you don't want to risk too much. And in fact, he came really close to a win in this game. Let's see what happens. Again, g3. It's curious. He obviously has prepared the fianchetto line against the Grunfeld and King's Indian setups. Kramnik has been very successful with, for example, the bayonet attack against the King's Indian, but here he plays g3. He played knight c3 against Swidler and managed to get in some good preparation. But here g3, bishop c6, yeah. This is a very solid line with d5. Yeah, here the most common way to play is actually to take on d5 or to cover the pawn in some way. So like, let's say here, knight f3, bishop g7, and then cover the pawn like this, or like b3. In the most common move, however, is taking, and this is a very solid position, which very often is drawn. Actually, it's a bit similar to the exchange Slav, but both sides have fianchettoed. However, in this position, amazingly, Kramnik played the move e3, and yeah, this is really amazing about chess. I have close to 800 games in my database with the position here before e3, and this has never been played. It's a genuine novelty, at least in top level chess. I mean, it's possible that it was played in some local tournament or something, but it's a genuine novelty on move 5 in top level chess. It's really interesting. Yeah, and the thing is, it's also a bit of a weird move. It would struck me of very strange actually, because the combination of g3 and e3 is often a bit questionable if black can take the pawn on c4, which is what Gelfand did, as you don't have a natural way to regain the pawn. It's similar to the Catalan, where this pawn cannot be recaptured by the bishop because it is on g2. However, it seems to be okay for white. I mean, Kramnik gets the pawn back fast enough. It still would have been interesting what white would have played if black simply would have completed development. Let's say bishop g7. I guess something like this, and then it's not clear what white is going to do next. Will he play this move or whatever? It's not clear at all. Well, Gelfand decided to take it after a long think. He obviously was surprised. It's clear. I mean, this is a novelty on move 5, and also it's not a move that strikes you of being too logical. But okay, Kramnik certainly succeeded in gaining time on the clock with this innovation. And next couple of moves were played somewhat quicker. And knight a3. This is the idea, getting the pawn back. And then you have a really typical position where white has this extra pawn in the center. This is not too different to the Aronian game of the same round with black against Ivanchuk. This extra central pawn, white has got a fianchettoed bishop. Look here. So this position should be very slightly better for white. He's got a good open diagonal, and he's got, after knight b6, this move knight a5, which is a motif that's worth remembering. The knight is very often nicely placed on a5 if you get this pawn formation. It simply attacks the queen side, and black has a hard time, first with developing the bishop, and then with getting rid of this piece, which always attacks b7. If you move the b pawn, there's always c6 to take. So what I'm talking about is, let's just for argument's sake play this. You can never play, or only after preparation, play a move like b6, as this pawn is always hanging. And this means that this knight is putting very annoying pressure on the queen side. Knight d5 was just a move to illustrate this. It's a stupid move. Yeah, Gelfand played queen c7, which is preparing e5 and makes much sense. This is the drawback of White's position. It didn't really control e5. Yeah, b4 and e5. Very logical play. And now White could have also played a move like, let's say, bishop b2 here, but he was probably a bit worried about black advancing and getting the d5 square. This is why he took on e5 to make sure that the position opens up. Queen takes and knight d4. Yeah, how to assess this position? It's not easy to play as black. This is clear, especially with more than 40 minutes clock disadvantage, and this is mostly because there's pressure on those pawns. It's not easy for black to find squares for pieces. The bishop on c8, for example, is not easy to develop. And White has got some nice pieces. Gelfand played this really well, I think. Knight e4, rook e8. Yeah, he went back now. Get out of possible trouble and preventing b5. Rook d1 and h5. This is a good move. Trying to play h4, which is it's not strictly an attacking move. The idea is if you manage to exchange the h pawns, then White can never play f3 as then g3 is hanging. f3 e4 could be a good idea for White under the right circumstances, but it's much harder to do if black has exchanged on g3. To illustrate, I just make a couple of moves that don't make much sense, yeah, just to show it, that you can more easily see what I'm talking about. If White would go with, I don't know, let's play some move, with f3, then there's simply this pawn hanging. And this is the difference if you have exchanged the h-pawns. This is a good idea to remember. The same applies, of course, if White plays h4, which would be really a bad move. It just weakens the king side. You will never be able to play f3 now due to the pawn on g3. Kramnik played rook d3, which is much stronger. This has more than one idea. It protects the pawn, the knight, and allows this pawn advance at a later stage. It also covers e3, which is a sensitive spot in White's position. Knight d5 and rook d1. This was all very, very well played, I think. Kramnik had about 20 minutes more on the clock. This is important. Yeah, what about taking on b4 now? It's not really good because of this tactical move. It's a big pin, and if black takes the queen, check. There's knight e7 with check. This is the problem, and White will win. Also e4 is hanging, and after that the rook, so many pieces hanging. Black couldn't take. He played bishop to g4, which is a good move. Again, he's playing this really well, I think. Bishop g4. So what about f3? Yeah, this is the most obvious move, but it's bad, really. Black can take on g3. It's not the only move, but this is the main reason why it wasn't played. Have a look at this. Applying a really, really nasty fork here. Queen moves. Something like this. If you look at this, black's got 2 pawns and a rook for 2 minor pieces, and White doesn't have good coordination in this position, even if he takes. Yeah, black goes to f5, not much regard for his pawn structure, but he wants to have the active pieces. You cannot afford to go all the way back to c8. Let's say takes, and black then will centralize. It's clear that black has some advantage. It's not quite clear how much it is, but this is certainly nothing that white can allow. Also, always remember that Kramnik needed to play in a way that you don't risk too much. A loss at this point is simply fatal. Let's say he would lose the game and Carlsen would win, then it's basically over. If he's half a point behind Carlsen, then Carlsen needs a draw with white in the last round, so he cannot lose the game as white. It's simply not on. Cannot risk too much. Okay, so what is white supposed to play? He played rook c1 now. In fact, there also was an alternative, and this is this move. It's probably not so great, but it's something you need to calculate. The idea is, of course, that the knight on d5 is hanging. It leads to great complications. Queen e6, rook takes, and now knight c3. And this is a position you should look at for quite a moment, because it's really amazing how much pieces are hanging. Yeah, d5, d1, even double by the knight and the bishop. There's this hanging, and there's also the knight on c6 hanging. So white has sacrificed a piece first on c6, but got the piece back on d5, so he's 2 pawns up, but there's everything hanging in this position, and it seems that the tactics work out nicely for black. There are some ways to even get in trouble as white, and this is I think why Kramnik avoided this. Always keep in mind he should try to win, but he never ever can afford a loss in this game. One line which is possible: knight d4, retreating and attacking the queen. This could lead to a very forcing sequence. Let's have a look.
Check.
Gaining a tempo. This is not 100% forced, but it's close. This kind of position you can easily lose as white. Really easily. You have 2 pawns for the exchange, but if black manages to enter on c2, for example, you need to be cautious here. Just for example, this would be hugely different if this bishop would be on c5, for example. Then white is playing for a win. But here, this a3, a2 configuration is really unlucky. Black will win the pawn. And something like this. This is the position that Kramnik, of course, must avoid at all costs. Here only black can win. It's not clear if he can manage, but you will never win as white, and you get tortured. And as mentioned, the loss is fatal. Just one line. He avoided all this and played rook c1. A very good decision, I think. After this, after rook c1, you can simply continue the game and press, and you don't risk losing. Yeah, now a very interesting and I think good approach by Gelfand. He took on d4, very concrete and good play. The idea is that, of course, white needs to recapture with the rook, and now he went knight g5, and this makes some sense. You give up the dark squared bishop now to get big influence on the light squares. And maybe even on a good day you get a mating attack. So a very, very good way to play. Now Kramnik went queen d3. And here Gelfand, I think, made a slight mistake. Here he could have gotten a relatively easy to play and good position with the move bishop f3. The idea is that, of course, white cannot take. This is very easy, losing the exchange. And you simply put the bishop in the heart of white's camp and trying to exchange it, and you fight for the light squares. If white plays a move like b5, which looks very good at first, attacking the queen, you play queen e6, and this now gets very tricky for white. How do you cover the light squares? It's really difficult now. Let's say you go queen f1, yeah, to cover all this. Then there's this shot.
Check.
And it's a big problem. This is all hanging. Especially the knight is the bishop is hanging. Yeah, in fact, after queen e6, white is in big trouble and will probably lose the game. It's very hard to even think about drawing here. b5 is a big mistake. Probably white must play, or can play a move like e4, for example. Then white, black can exchange the bishop and has very nice pressure here on e4. Let's say f3, h4, just a sample line, and I think a line that should be very much okay for black. He has good pieces. He can always also drop the knight back to e6, play rook d8, and I think this should be quite okay for black. In the game, he got into some trouble. He played
Check.
knight f3. It looks good, yeah, but it has got a concrete problem. Now after b5, how do you protect the queen side? In fact, there's no way to do it. Played queen e6, knight b7. There was a pawn gone anyway. Of course, black has got some compensation in the form that this bishop is very strong. And you have counterplay on the light squares. This is what happened. Threatening mate. Queen here.
Check.
Takes. Rook e6. Knight b5. This is probably what Gelfand had in mind when he went for all this. And black has got, as mentioned, some compensation. One point is that you also always have this idea, counterplay against the a-pawn, and white's king is of course stuck at the back rank. Yeah, Gelfand played this rook b8 move. In fact, if you look at this with the engine, it points out that rook b6 is supposed to be stronger. Yeah, maybe it is, but it's difficult for a human. Gelfand was down to 6 minutes, also due to this opening surprise, which costs lots of time. And here, this is the idea, to now go to a6. This kind of continuation. This is what the computer gives. It's probably better than the game. I think I agree. The idea is that the pressure on a2 is very, very annoying, and it's difficult for white to untangle this. In the game, as mentioned, he played rook b8 and knight d6. This is a difference. The rook doesn't work here on a6. Not f6, yeah. If you look at this, it seems that white should have something. The computer gives all kinds of lines leading to a very big advantage, but it's in fact not 100% clear if some of them are really going to lead to a win. For example, rook d to c4 is a computer line that Kramnik didn't play. And the computer says, okay, white is winning with this. But if you look at this a little bit deeper, you will see that it's not so clear-cut. Even 1.5 by the computer doesn't really mean it's winning in some cases.
Check.
Look at this.
Check.
It looks very good,
Check.
yeah, but still Are you sure that white is going to win this? Actually, I am not sure. This can easily end in a draw. Black's got counterplay with rook here. The king is insecure. Look at the white squares here. Bishop f3, rook d1 is checkmate. Along these lines. The computer is on 1.5, but it's not clear that this is winning. Its main line is f4, f5, and how can white be on 1.5 here? I simply don't see it. It's just the a pawn, and if you exchange rook, you probably draw the game. Even this is not 100% clear. Yeah, Kramnik played rook f4, which is also very understandable. He wanted to get rid of this bishop, which is always irritating white. And yeah, Gelfand dropped back. Rook c2 and rook e4 and knight e4. Gelfand played this part of the game, I think, excellent in terms of move quality per time. It's great how he defended this position. Here there also was rook d8, also interesting move, which is probably also okay for black. He played this knight to e4 and allowed knight takes f7, which at first looks bad, but he had an idea, of course. Rook a6, this was the counterplay idea, attacking the bishop and attacking the knight. So both pieces are under attack, and yeah, Kramnik didn't have much choice. Needed to drop the bishop back. And here in this position, I think Gelfand commits the only real mistake that he made in the game, and this actually offered Kramnik some chances to win the game. What would have drawn, but this is a very theoretical thing to say, because he's got 3 minutes, and this is a very computerish line. The move that would have been drawn instantly, but not easily, it's rook c1, rook b1, sorry. The idea is on rook c7, which looks super dangerous, threatening knight h6 and rook f8 mate, that on this move you play g5. And this is the very difficult move to see, as the a6 rook suddenly covers the h6 square. Knight g5 is the next move you need to have an answer to. The point is that this is winning for white. Very hard to see. But it's this move that saves the game. Now attacking c1. It blocks the connection here, and white now must play rook takes c6. There is not much else. Black can win a pawn in the go, and he will get this as well. This kind of position, and here of course black can never lose. He can simply play this and sort of pursue white's rook eternally with the draw. White can never exchange, of course. He will lose the a pawn and the game. So rook b1 was the way to draw the game, but it's, I mean, who is supposed to see this with 3 minutes? It's not possible, simply. You can play the right move, but it's more than a matter of luck. Also, there are other things to consider. Here white, for example, also has the move f3, which is answered by rook takes a2. Also something you need to see beforehand. The point being that rook c8 check. King g7, f takes e4, bishop f7, rook c7 is answered by king g8, and this is a draw. Yeah, white can lose, of course, so here you can
Checkmate.
mate yourself. Or this one, which after this continuation leads to a drawn rook endgame. Yeah, rook b1, but okay, who's supposed to see that? Gelfand played rook e8, which protects the knight and attacks this knight, so it forces white's hand in a way. Rook c7 and rook a2. This was the idea.
Check.
King h8. And in this position, maybe there's the point where Kramnik could have gotten a very big advantage. Maybe. But the thing is that even this isn't 100% clear. The move to go was g4 in this position. It's not a very intuitive move. The idea is to take on h5 and then play rook f5. So if black plays, I don't know, a move like a5, yeah, using the pawn, then there's the capture and rook f5, and this is actually a relatively easy win, as after the capture on h5 there's simply tons of discoveries and black's king is in a terrible crossfire. It's also two pawns down. So this is not possible. Black probably needs to take it. Here, needs to take it. And then yeah, knight recaptures. The positive point about all this is that the white knight manages to escape from its square on h6, and this is here very difficult to assess. There are some lines that the computer assesses as winning, but I'm not sure if it is really winning. It's always those opposite colored bishops that can save black by exchanging rooks. For example, without any rooks, this position is probably just a draw, with not much going on actually, really. One line that the computer gives, for example, is bishop g8. I'm not even sure what this move is doing, but just to show it, the computer gives something like this as leading to a big edge for white. But I'm not so sure. How exactly do you win now? It's always a bit tricky with possible counterplay. The bishop, if it at one point gets back to the diagonal, something like this, I'm not sure. I mean, this is obviously very good for white, but if it's winning, it's a completely different story. But this is the chance probably that Kramnik had after what he played. Here again, he could have repeated once and played g4, but he he put his hopes on this f3 move, and this actually doesn't seem to be enough. Gelfand took now with very little time on the clock, and rook d8. This is what he had prepared. Very nice, threatening checkmate. And now black's counterplay, I think, works perfectly to a draw. I think it was a really well played game. I mean, the level of play in this game was really, really high, considering that they have played 13 rounds and not with any kind of 10 move draws or something. Very rarely they played non-eventful draws. It was really a big fight in most of the games. And really look at the quality of this game. There were very little mistakes. Gelfand defended very well, I think. So rook d8 with this counter attack, and
check.
Kramnik gave checks first here to make move 40. Here, in fact, he had a funny possibility: bishop h3,
check.
a3, which the computer at first likes a lot, but it doesn't seem to lead to much. I give a possible variation. Rook takes. Of course, you must take, otherwise it's mate. And what it is doing, it prevents the checkmate, so you can actually take here. And now rook d2. This is black's counterplay, of course, threatening the mate. The idea of all this is the following, which defense against the mate. And what is the possible consequence?
Check. Check.
It's this rook endgame coming up. Just a possible line. And here black can simply jettison the pawn. And this is just a draw. It's quite funny what some engines think about this position. it's just a draw and very obvious for human, as it doesn't make any difference if white has got 1 or 2 e-pawns. It's not a big difference. Houdini is like plus 1.5. If you don't give it to table bases, table base immediately shows a draw. But if you give it to a somewhat weaker engine like Stockfish, it gives like plus 4, which is just funny because it's really a relatively easy draw. Okay, this is not a completely forced line, but it shows that black's got very good drawing chances.
Check.
Well, Kramnik gave those checks as mentioned, but he of course didn't want to draw. He tried everything to win the game, simply because he also observed that that Magnus was, I can tell that much, pressing for a win, not with big prospects, but he was pressing for a win, and Kramnik certainly wanted to try the utmost in this game to win it. So king e1 to get rid of the mate threat, and here in this position Gelfand almost invested 20 minutes. He got this 1 hour extra. Yeah, it's a bit difficult to fathom here. He had about 2 minutes left before time control, and the clock springs to 43, so he spent almost 20 minutes on this move. In fact, knight c3 also was drawing, but this is a good way to do it. You can still easily make mistakes. Let's say knight f2 with the mate threat. This unfortunately
Check.
runs into something like this.
Check. Check.
And this knight is on a very sad post on f2. It can never go anywhere. Only to h3, which is a bit sad. This was bad, yeah. But knight c5 is simply okay with this idea.
Check.
And, gave checks.
Check. Check.
And now tried this.
Check.
Knight d3 check. And king to the side. Yeah, white is threatening the mate, so black must go here.
Check. 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 Check.
Yeah, here Gelfand took a while to really work it out to the draw. He calculated until the end, I think, when he invested a couple of minutes. Yeah, now there's this threat. White cannot go here because of rook d1 mate. This is the counterplay. e4. So he calculated up to this point, I think, and now he saw that he's got one way to draw this, and this is simply pushing the a-pawn. White tried to not take it, but it's unavoidable at some point. And then rook d2. The idea was simply to get the rooks off the 7th rank so that there's no mate threat. And now you threaten this perpetual on the 2nd rank, and it's just dead now. Was it agreed drawn here? Yeah, rook a7 and rook g2 and a draw. White has no way to play for win.
Check.
If you look at this, for example,
Check.
giving checks, you can easily lose here. How do you even avoid that you lose the pawn here? If you go back, for example,
Check.
then
Check. 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 check,
Something like this, you can easily lose the game, and by this you lose all chances in the tournament. So white needs to draw now. Rook a7 with the counter threat of mate forces the draw. Rook g2 and draw agreed. So a really good game. What can you say? Only if you look at this with the engine, it only points out really minor mistakes, and a really great level of play after that long of a tournament. And let's not forget that it's also a matter of age and stamina, and those are not those two are not young boys anymore. Okay, so a good game really by both players, but it's just a draw, and this means that Carlsen's game is really essential now. If he draws, just to make out to line out some scenarios, if he draws the game, then Kramnik goes into the final round with half a point advantage, and it's sort of still open, the race, but still Kramnik with half a point ahead holds the advantage. But if Carlsen wins the game, then he would be on equal points with Kramnik, and he would have the better tiebreak because he has this extra win, because he lost one game and won one game, compared to Kramnik, who played draws and wins. So there's this crazy tiebreak with more wins means you're ahead. With what also this implies is that if you have lost games, then you're ahead. Okay, let's go to Magnus' game. Radjabov against Carlsen. Radjabov went 1d4. And so now it's curious what opening is Magnus going to play. He certainly needs to sort of keep the ball in the game, yeah, just get the game going and trying to keep winning chances without risking too much, because while he's half a point behind Kramnik, and there's even the scenario, let's say he loses the game, Kramnik wins or draws, then it's over. So he can never ever lose the game as black. He needs to try to play in a way that it continues, and he maybe has got something, but not risking too much. So what is he going to play? Yeah, the Nimzo. It's the opening for all occasions, so to say. You can play it if you if you play for a win, you can play it. You can play it to stay solid. It's so flexible, and I think a really good choice. It wouldn't have helped to play anything crazy here, like say Benoni or something. Just play a complex game and see what happens. Yeah, Queen C2, the classical line that that has always been one of White's main moves. And Radjabov had played this already before against Giri, who played d5. Carlsen, however, plays d6, which is quite typical of his opening approach. He very often doesn't mind to play sidelines and just get a playable position, not trying to get in anything fancy. One certain advantage of this move is that pieces stay on the board, and it remains in a way complex. Maybe in a way complex that black is even slightly worse, but you maintain a complicated position, or a position which involves some fight. Just for example, if you go d5, that is what Giri played. There's the line that was played in this game, and black doesn't really have much
check
to avoid this. This is very difficult to play for win as black. If white doesn't want to risk anything here, it's very tough to play for win as black. With d6 you keep the pieces on the board. And yeah, knight f3, white can also play bishop g5, for example. After which black has various ideas. He can play, for instance, this has been played recently. One idea being that sometimes you even not exchange instantly on c3, but play bishop a5 if it is attacked. Interesting line. But Radjabov decided to just develop normally. Knight d7. Here black also has the possibility to play knight c6, which transposes into the Zurich variation. This will be the one of the lines that I will feature in my upcoming book. But knight d7, of course, is a viable alternative. It's a bit more flexible on the square, and you can also use the c-pawn now. We will see. g3, castles. All this looks very normal. c6 is a good move. It's directed against the bishop, and it also prevents knight d5 ideas. In some positions, knight d5 can be annoying. Yeah, here white has got quite some options. He went first rook d1, rook e8, and now he exchanged on e5. This is certainly not bad. I mean, it's not so ambitious, but it's not a bad move. An interesting way to play in this position is the move e3, keeping this pawn center intact. He maybe didn't want that because at some point black plays maybe e4. I don't know. In this concrete position, it's probably I don't know. Maybe even here, something like this. That seems playable for black. It's interesting though. e3 keeps pressure, or keeps the tension. Pressure is the wrong word. He took on e5. It's not a bad move. It's just simplifying a bit. And now a3. Yeah, here black also could have kept the bishop, drop it all the way back, or to c7. No, not here, c7. But Carlsen simply recaptured, or captured on c3, and played queen e7. He just played it in a simple but very healthy fashion. Here it's quite funny, I think, that Houdini, my engine, and every top player's engine also, recommends the funny move knight h4, which I frankly speaking don't understand at all. I don't know what this knight is doing on h4. Black just goes here, and maybe at some point knight g6, and you really ask yourself, what the heck are you doing on h4? Well, I don't understand the move, to be honest. Yeah, he went b4. And this is a move that is actually debatable. It looks very normal, but it entails a certain risk. And this means, here, the c4 pawn. The c4 pawn is a bit weak now. He could have also played just b3, maintaining this structure, and not weakening c4. It leads to an unclear position. Black can, for instance, play e4. Let's say here, and now let's say here. This is interesting. It's not clear how to assess this position. Maybe here, controlling this square, and then bishop somewhere. It's probably between a slight advantage for white and equal. Black has got some chances, but white has got two bishops. It's got a good square here. I don't know. White is probably slightly better. He went b4 though. Knight b6, immediately eyeing this weakness. And here I think white should have played a4 to fight for an advantage. Idea is playing a5 after e4. Knight somewhere. I don't know where. Here, maybe. This is a very complicated position with still chances for white to play for an edge. However, he played bishop e3, and I'm not sure what this move is doing. I think it simply concedes any hopes for an advantage, but I don't know. Carlsen played knight g4, normal move, attacking the knight. The bishop, sorry, attacking the bishop, and white cannot play bishop c5 because of this embarrassing reply. This actually wins for black outright. It's not even slightly better or something, it wins. It takes here. Knight c3, and now there's too much hanging. e7 is not really hanging because of mate on d8, but just have a brief look at this line. And white gets, well, it's simply a terrible position. Look at the knights here, really ugly. So white is much worse, probably losing. Yeah, knight d2, this was necessary to cover c4. And now Carlsen went f5. Yeah, and you see that knight g4 and f5 really helped black a lot. The pawn on f5 prevents any knight e4 ideas, like knight e4 to d6, and simply gains space. Radjabov played h3. This wasn't strictly necessary, but still good, I think, to clarify the situation. Took and e4. This is a strong move, e4. So it's accepting that long term maybe you have a bad bishop. It's looking at your own pawns, at those pawns, but it guarantees that white's bishop is out of the game. It's simply blocked, and it gives black a space advantage. This is very important. At this stage, I think black has very good equality and even chances to play for more. Note that Radjabov was about 20 minutes behind on the clock. This is very important in this game, the clock management. Played rook c1, bishop e6, queen c3. And now Carlsen went rook d8, rook d8, bishop f1. Here in this position there's actually an interesting recommendation by the computer, and this is bishop f7. This wasn't played, but it seems very strong, really. I'm not sure why Carlsen rejected this. I think he must have considered the move. It has got two ideas. It's got the e3 idea, shattering white's structure, and also bishop h5, which can be a good idea, attacking this point. The thing is, e3 is such a big threat here. White maybe needs to play e3 himself, and this is so ugly. Look at this. And black has an excellent position. I'm really curious why he didn't play that. It looks really strong. Okay, I understand he played c5, which is a very good long-term move. It basically means that you try to fix this pawn on a light square, and it sort of guarantees that in the long run black will always have chances to do something. Still, this alternative was strong, I think. c5, yeah. Now Radjabov surprised me and lots of spectators by taking. He basically figured, I think, that okay, I'm worsening my pawn structure, but I managed to exchange some pieces and probably will draw the existing structure. Let's see what happens. Knight a4, of course. Queen here. Knight c5. Knight b3. This was certainly his plan. And Carlsen played this. And this is probably the strongest way to go about it. Not exchange too much. If black takes here, this looks very nice. I mean, you attack this weakness, but white will protect. And how do you make progress? It's very difficult for black to get anything substantial in this position. Knight a6 was better, keeping a bit more pieces on the board. And here Radjabov exchanged queen c. Didn't need to necessarily, but I think what he was after is was this position with the active rook, and you've got the knight coming here. He assessed that he would be able to draw this. In fact, this is probably true. White should draw, but it's clear that Carlsen will play this until hell freezes over. And in fact, this is what happened. This is one of the longest games I ever covered in a video. Rook d8. So here I was quite surprised to see that Carlsen played knight to c5. I was really expecting rook e8, exchanging the rooks, or white can probably retreat, yeah. But to make sure that the rook is expelled from black's camp. I think it's hard to do without without the rook exchange. Well, he played knight c5, and here in retrospect, I'm really curious why Radjabov didn't exchange. I understand that the knight has got a good square on d4, but taking on c5 looks really drawish in my book. Just have a look at this. Of course, black has got play still. g5, king to e5, and so on. It's still a bit of something for black. Black is the only one to do something in the position, but it still feels relatively, yeah, like white should draw relatively easily. But he didn't do it. Played knight here, which is not bad. I mean, it's a good position of the knight. You can do it. He was low on time, if you see this.
Check.
Got a couple of more moves here in time trouble. h6. I think actually h6 is a slight mistake, but it's not punished. I think if you look at this now,
check.
A couple of moves later. Here, rook c7. The idea is, of course, white cannot capture. This traps the rook. But white has got this possibility now, and I think this should help him, damaging the pawn structure on the king side. Black has no big choice here. He can not prevent that white takes. You cannot go here, of course. It just loses even. And you probably need to play something like this and continue from there. And I really don't see how black is going to win this position. Now with those two weaknesses that he needs to take care of. You simply don't exchange the rooks and stay on the 8th rank. It looks, I think, okay. But never forget, he's down to 1 minute something. And it's hard to make those decisions with little time. He wanted to make the time control first. And now Magnus simply prevents this idea. A good decision, I think.
Check.
Yeah, and this was the last move to make before time control. King e5. And frankly speaking, the next couple of moves, there's not happening much.
Check. Check.
The interesting moment comes now. Look at this position. Why to move? Why not just play... Okay, well, the next move is okay, but look at the clock. 43 minutes. Spent 15 minutes on rook b8. Carlsen played rook b7.
Check.
And after another 10 minutes or something, he exchanged the rooks. I simply didn't understand why do that. I mean, it's still a draw, but why not keep the rooks on? How does black improve his position? I simply don't see it. Black can shuffle all day long his pieces, but you won't make any big progress. You just attack this pawn. How does black improve here? I have no idea. I have no idea.
Check.
Well, it still should draw, but I didn't understand why Radjabov kept changing the position and not simply kept it in a way. Okay, it's still not a dramatic thing to it's nothing to criticize too harshly. Yeah, it's a bit of shuffling. And this is actually a very important thing to learn. It took me really a long while of playing chess to understand that sometimes it's a good policy to do nothing. And this is what Black is doing. He's doing not much, sort of shuffling around and still inducing little ideas, yeah, like king d6, knight d7, e5, king c5, attacking this, and so on. But you just need to prolong the game and make sure that the clock is going down to increase the pressure. And this is what Carlsen does perfectly in the game. He simply continues and sets those little problems, like this. How do you defend this, and so on. And this led to further decline on Radjabov's clock. So we are past move 60 now, and it's important to see Carlsen got 39 minutes left, and Radjabov is down to 16. And now we are in this sudden death period where it's 16 minutes for the rest of the game, but with 30 seconds increment. So it's not a matter of playing on time or anything. It's simply that the clock is going down, and therefore the pressure is increased. But Radjabov is not in danger of losing on time, really, as he's getting this 30 seconds.
Check.
Yeah, and here he made a really surprising move. And I'm not sure why. Really, he played a4, which looks at first sight really terrible. White plays a pawn on the light squares. It looks like a beginner's move, to be honest. But of course, it's not something that he. He was aware of the dangers. Of course, it's not a bad player. The thing is, he's got concrete ideas with this move, and they are working. It's the fun thing, but it sets. It demands very precise play by White in the next couple of moves, while it's not clear what actually is happening if White is doing nothing. Just stay in the position. What's happening here? Nah, this is actually bad. Sorry, it was a bad example. Oops.
Check.
Need to go back to the position. Sorry, he played a4. You can stay instead of playing a4. But you need to do it properly. Let's say here. And what is Black doing now? How do you improve? After this move, you go here. It's not on. King here.
Check.
Get hit by the check. This is actually a bit similar to the game, but you don't have the pawn on a4. To cut it short, it wasn't necessary to play like this. His idea is tactical. He wants to play c5 and exchange pawns. But let's see what happens. He's down to 5 minutes, yeah? Spending 2 more minutes.
Check.
And now we see the problem. This pawn is hanging, and there's no way anymore to defend it. If you play this, for example, you will have big problems. What move now? King cannot move. The knight, it can move, but look at this. This is resignable. To cut things short.
Check. Check.
This is what he played, and this was the idea, I think, of the a4 move, to get this exchange operation in. I think he calculated something like this. Not this, but the capture, for example.
Check.
This is a draw, for example. This is maybe what Radjabov thought of when he played the a4 move, that he cannot lose this position, which is true. He will attack the weakness, and Black has no way to make any progress in this position. It's just a draw. But Carlsen didn't do that. He just went back to c7. And yeah, this keeps the game going. Radjabov is down to 2 minutes now. And well, he spent lots of time with trying to sort of alter the position to get a clearer draw. But this always meant you have to be precise and play sometimes the only moves with little time on the clock. And this is not easy to do. Well, okay, he took.
Check.
Oh, he didn't take, sorry.
Check.
What he took now. And now we see that you cannot defend the pawn.
Check.
This was the idea, getting activity. And yeah, well, king a6, black's got an extra pawn. And now the question is, can white draw this with his active pieces? Gave this check, king b7, and returned. And here Magnus realized that the planned move, knight c6, was not working due to knight b2. And knight b2 means Kramnik is the challenger, if this would happen. So not this, but king a6 back, repeated once.
Check.
And now he went to a7. The point is, if white now attacks the pawn, you've got bishop b5 with a very annoying pin, and this is also, yeah, this is winning for black now. Cannot allow this pin. So king d4 is what he played, and this is the issue. The king here is very active. In this position, note how important the time management is. Carlsen played quicker before, and now he invested a little bit more than 10 minutes,
check.
Yeah, 12 minutes or something, to calculate this. He had the time to properly assess the variations, and Radjabov was down to 1 minute, 1 minute something, and it's also not only an issue of finding a good move in a minute. It's also the problem that you're already playing for 6.5 hours and you're tired. It's unavoidable, and the combination of all this makes this really difficult. Okay, knight c6 check. What should the king do here? I think here he really should have played king to d5, but it's a hard decision, of course, with little time. He played king c5, which is not fatal. King c5. Somehow the software lagged a bit. King d5 is the interesting move, and I think this is what Carlsen calculated so long. Just a sample line.
Check.
This is the complicated thing. And now this move, very tricky. Knight on the on the edge of the board, on the corner even, and you get g3. And this is a very tricky position. White, for example, he cannot play this move. It's very funny. Knight g3, and this threatens bishop e8, picking up the bishop, and it doesn't have a square. It's a bit of a tragic piece now. He needs to move the king in a way, and then you play this and win with the e pawn. The knight is a notoriously bad piece to stop pawns. So after knight h1, white must play this move first. It's quite funny, this move first, and you all need to see this in 1 minute something. Yeah? Knight g3 and bishop c4, and now the idea is king f4, attacking and then trying to get rid of the pawns, and I think it should lead to a draw, but my analysis was not hours long, so it's not easy. Just a sample line. It's silly to go in the corner. Let's go here. Something like this. White will get a couple of pawns back here. And I think this should end in a draw, really. Black will get the h pawn here, like this. but white I think has got good chances to draw the position. It's possible that we get some sort of 2 minor pieces against 1 minor piece endgame. It's a possible scenario. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it should be a draw. This was the king d5 move, but he went king here, which is not it's not terrible actually. Carlsen played king here, and now knight c4. Why didn't he play king d4? I don't understand. Simply, look, what's black supposed to do? He needs to return, check. And then you can go. At least you can go back again. I think he just made a colossal miscalculation in this position. Knight c4. Probably he was only considering the capture, and this is indeed a draw. We saw something similar before with this bishop move. For example, here bishop e8. You can even go here and draw the game. Something like this is just dead. Black has no way of winning this. But of course, Carlsen is just giving this check here, and probably he just overlooked this. It's possible he was down to a couple of seconds, and hard to say. Yeah, here this is probably gone. If white takes, he didn't do that. If white takes, black's got 2 extra pawns, and you cannot capture, of course. This is a new queen, and this should be a win with the two pass pawns. It's not so easy to analyze this to a complete conclusion. I can just give you a sample line to illustrate how it might work out. Something like this. Yeah, it's a bit of a Zugzwang. The knight doesn't have many squares, and it always needs to stay here, or at least return there to take a look at the pawn. And white will have problems to keep the black king out. For example, something like this.
Check.
This is important. Attacking f3 also. A very long line. It's just to illustrate some ideas. For example, if now, what should white do? If you approach this now, then there's the a pawn coming.
Check.
Something like this is, you won't survive. There's too many weaknesses. You can also not take here. It just promotes. So this is a loss, yeah, the capture. This is why he went here. And now very interesting and a really cool move to make in such a situation. Carlsen didn't take on f2. It probably wins, but it's not a very controlled way to play the position. He played the very nice move knight to c1, attacking the bishop, and it doesn't have any squares besides f1, so he went for f1, and now bishop b5, and now you're in a Zugzwang kind of position. Very difficult to make any move here. Yeah, Radjabov at the end decided to take on a5 with 50 seconds on the clock. King c3 is the move he should have tried, but it's probably losing anyway. For example, let's say for example this one. It's rather difficult to avoid the type of endgame that we had before. This kind of endgame. It's very similar to the one before and probably lost. But it's the one that would have prolonged the game at least a bit. He took on a5 and gave away this bishop because he hoped that he's got some counterplay with the king and the knight. But Carlsen played this very nicely, attacking the pawn here, and now very precisely using the king to block White's king from entering, protecting f5.
Check.
And now you're absolutely sure that there's nothing bad happening. Everything's protected. You cannot move the f-pawn. And let's say you would go here. Simply take this. And black gets a new queen. And this means that this will fall and the game is totally lost. So Radjabov, after bishop g4, resigned the game. So a titanic struggle of 89 moves. Carlsen lost in 90 moves against Ivanchuk just to win the next game in 89 moves. So a big accomplishment. It was not so much, it wasn't a brilliant game or something by Carlsen, but it just was such a great fighting effort to just grind on and on until the opponent breaks down. It's really amazing how often he manages to do that, where the opponent's down, always posing these little problems, and then with little time on the clock they very often falter. Of course, Radjabov has had a simply terrible tournament. I mean, he lost now, it's a fifth or sixth loss on, not sure. I think it's the sixth loss. It's certainly a factor that if you play someone whose self-confidence is shaken, it simply happens. If you lose so many games, you simply feel terrible. Then I think it's more likely to happen that someone is breaking down. So now, before the last round, and I will upload this shortly. This is 2 hours until the last round is starting. I really, if you have the chance, watch it live. It's so exciting. Okay, the last round. Just to line it out briefly, we've got the two games. Carlsen is playing white against Swidler, and Kramnik black against Ivanchuk. And of course, you never know what will happen in the Ivanchuk-Kramnik game, because Ivanchuk can do anything. He can play a brilliant game and win. He can play like, I'm sorry to be direct, he can play like a moron and lose. It's sometimes really, it's not understandable what he's doing. Or he can overstep the time or whatever, anything can happen. Of course, Magnus has white against Swidler. So, considering the tiebreak rules, it's not difficult anymore to work it out. If Carlsen wins against Swidler, he wins the tournament and is a challenger, because Kramnik at best can get on the equal amount of points, and then Carlsen is ahead because he has got more won games in the tiebreak. If they have the same result, both draw, both lose, then Carlsen also qualifies. And Kramnik only can do it if he scores more points. So he needs to, if Carlsen loses, for example, Kramnik needs to draw. If Carlsen draws, Kramnik needs to win. And Carlsen has got white against Swidler and certainly will try to play a sort of controlled game where you can do a little bit of something but not risk terribly much. So Kramnik basically needs to try to play for win as black. Anything else is curious. It would be quite interesting to see, for example, if Ivanchuk plays e4. You never know, Ivanchuk can do anything. But if he plays e4, what Kramnik will play, he certainly, I cannot imagine him playing the Berlin or something like that. He needs to have some kind of surprise going. He's not the guy to play something crazy, but he needs to keep the game going and try to play for win. So it will be very, very exciting. And also look at Carlsen. He cannot play a draw, really. You must always reckon that Ivanchuk maybe oversteps the time or something weird is happening. So both players will try to play for a win. But it's certainly very helpful that Carlsen has got white. And the same result obviously is enough for him. He's, I think, maybe a 70% favorite now, or maybe even more. But okay, it will be very, very exciting. Yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I'll do, of course, a wrap-up of the final round, but I'm not quite sure when, because it's very much possible that we have two very, very long games. It can happen. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in live for the live broadcast if you've got the chance. Thanks.